met. My name is Jake. I am so incredibly grateful that you are here, that we have just had the opportunity to continue to grow as a community over this last year. It's just been a real special time in my life and for all of us. And so I'm just really grateful for you. And that's something that really comes to the forefront during this time of year is gratitude. So I wanted to spend just the next couple of weeks talking about gratitude, what we're grateful for, how to have gratitude in a very challenging time in the world and during challenging times in our lives. And so to do that, I was doing some reminiscing and reflecting this week, and I was remembering something from when I was a child, and I'm curious if it's something that you remember. Of course, for a lot of you, it might be a little further back to remember than for me. I'm sorry, had to do it. You're wiser. Okay. Someone just walks down, they're like, I was giving it a shot and then it just didn't. I have this memory of being a kid and getting upset at something and it making me cry and me being angry and crying. And then all of a sudden through my crying, I kind of got over whatever I was upset about. My brain was like, I don't even know what we're worried about. But my body was still in cry mode. And so then I was faced with this decision. Do I just keep on crying because that's what my body's doing? And more often than not, yes. You just kind of stay angry even though you don't even know why. And yet I realize I catch myself doing this as an adult, but often with stress. I'll be walking around the house and I'll be stressed out or worried about something and ruminating. Does anyone else do this? And then you get distracted, maybe with some laundry or something. And then before you know it, you've forgotten what you're worried about. But you remember that you were supposed to be worried about something. You're like, what was I stressed out about? I can't forget. I can't just not be stressed, Think. And yet, for me, this really brings to mind this interesting experience we have with our emotions. Are our emotions things that just happen to us? Or are they more connected to the stories we tell about the experiences that we're having in our lives? Are emotions just things that we catch, like a cold? Like, I sat next to a grumpy person on the plane and they weren't wearing a mask, and so I'm probably going to be grumpy for the next couple of days. Or are our emotions directly connected to the way that we are perceiving our lives and the world around us? See, as human beings, we have this incredible ability to actually change what we feel based on what we're focusing on, based on what we're tuning into. We have this ability to reflect on our own experience of life and give meaning to it. For example, how many of you have watched a sad documentary? Or, you know what? I know that's a lot to ask. Just a sad YouTube video. Okay. Maybe that's a lot to ask. A sad TikTok. Okay. And yet, seeing someone else's misfortune, I know we don't want to admit it, but it made you feel a little bit better about your own situation. You're like, oh, I'm grateful that that's not me. There's actually studies that show that when you watch a sad documentary, that it actually increases your feeling of gratitude or joy. And yet what's interesting is I find the opposite to be true, that when you spend too much time looking at social media and other people that seem richer and happier than you, of course, it's just their fake life, but it creates envy, right? You feel worse about your situation, which ironically has led me to the conclusion that social media is just a bad documentary, okay? But based on what we focus on, based on what we perceive in the world, we will write a story of lack or a story of abundance, a story of having enough. And that story is going to affect our beliefs. Our beliefs are going to affect our emotions, and our emotions are going to determine our actions, the way we actually show up in the world. So this series is called The Frequency of Gratitude, because I believe that of all of the things that we can perceive, all of the things that we could focus on or dial into in this world, I believe gratitude is one of, if not the most powerful and the fastest working. If it was like a medication that you saw a commercial for, you would be very skeptical. You'd be like, you're telling me that it works instantaneously and has no side effects whatsoever? At least give me diarrhea. Like, I want to believe it's real, you know? In in a spiritual context, I generally I avoid ever claiming that anything is a magic bullet. You know, generally in spirituality, there are no magic bullets. But when it comes to something that is pretty much like a key that seems to unlock so many doors within ourselves, gratitude is as close as it comes sometimes to a magic bullet. The Roman philosopher Cicero says, gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all of the others. There's something about gratitude that undergirds all of the other values that we might have. That gratitude leads us to empathy. Gratitude leads us to kindness. Gratitude leads us to peacefulness. So today I just want to take use an illustration that I can tell based on looking out in the room that I don't think there's anyone younger than me here. I'm not trying to do this whole thing. I'm sorry. I'm just saying we probably all remember a radio, right? You all remember how to use a radio? I know it's been a while. It's been probably we all have kind of phased it out. But as a kid, I loved the radio, and you turn the dials and you tune in to different frequencies, right? And the music that's coming from the radio, it's not being produced inside the box. No, the box is just something that is able to pick up frequencies that are coming externally. And I think that our brains have a similar capacity, that we are picking up on so much from our world that we tune into certain frequencies, right? And we tune out others. Like, how many of us have been diagnosed with selective hearing? Like, I know that's definitely one that I've been told. There you go. Every man in the room. I mean, it is what it is. But see, our ability to filter things, I know you might not feel this way, but our ability to filter certain things in and filter other things out, it can be a helpful tool. How many of us feel that our world today puts us on information overload all day long? Yep. So our ability to tune into some things and tune out others is just necessary and helpful just to get through the day. This, I think, is one of the most powerful aspects of meditation. Meditation teaches us to tune out the endless chatter of the brain and to tune into a deep sense of stillness and peace at the core of our being. We tune in, we tune out, we focus in, we focus out. I've been getting massages as sort of treatment for my car accident that I had not too long ago. And I was getting a massage from someone new this week, or it was last week, and within a couple minutes of the massage, she said, "You haven't commented on my thumb yet. Everyone comments on my thumb." And I was thinking, like, was I supposed to comment on your thumb? Is that like, I don't know massage etiquette well enough to go like, I really like the thumb. But anyway, as we moved on, she stuck her thumb into my neck, and I was like, this is probably good for healing. I get it. It's important. But it also was hurting really, really bad. You know when you get that massage where you're like, this is good for me, but I can't do it. I can do it. And I was honestly thinking, I don't know if I can manage this. I know I need to stick with it, but I don't know if I can manage the pain. And then I just had this thought. What if I just shift my focus to the other side of my neck that is not yet hurting? I'm like, this side's doing great. We're fine over here. Just rest over here. And honestly, it worked. I was like, oh man, we're okay. And then of course she went to that side and it all went out the window. But it helped me to realize that you can just shift your focus at will. And in some sense, it leads to an instantaneous change in our reality, like an on and off switch. You know, like for all of us in this room, we probably have moments through the day, through the week, where we experience stress or overwhelm. And maybe it's something as simple as you put on a song and it reminds you of something or someone, and it just brings a sense of peace. Or maybe you spend 5 minutes hanging out with your dog and you let some of their inner peace rub off on you. I can't speak for cats personally. I'm sure, cat people out there, it's great. But there are these moments, these things that we do that just can instantaneously shift our reality. And yet, how many of us, myself very much guilty of this, we forget to give ourselves those moments. We forget to do the things that we need to do in order to bring that peace. And so, like muscle memory, I think we can work on this ability to tune back into the things that shift our perception. The reality of life, says Roger Birkman, is that your perceptions, right or wrong, influence everything else you do. When you get a proper perspective of your perceptions, you may be surprised how many other things fall into place. What are those things in your life that help you get a proper perspective of your perceptions? And in our attempt to get that perspective, sometimes in life it feels passive, as though we're not in control of what we perceive, and life is just giving us this endless stream of things to perceive, and we have no control over it. It's almost like, again, if you can remember, like a radio station, And it's such a foreign concept for so many people in the younger generations to imagine that there was a time where you weren't in control of what you listened to, that someone, a DJ just put a playlist together and you had to listen to that. I actually miss those days personally. But so often I think with our experience of life, we perceive ourselves as just passive listeners to the radio station of life. And yet I honestly wonder, what if we are the DJs? What if we get to actually be in control of the experience of life that we have, even by just being in control of our perception? That the experience we cultivate will change our reality, and it'll change the way that we interact with others. Just a few days ago, we were driving with some friends, and they're from out of state, so kind of just showing them, welcome to Arizona. And of course, to give them a warm Arizona welcome, we were being tailgated by someone driving a truck angrily, and this person drove around us and drove next to us and rolled down their window and looked at us and stuck his hand out the window and gave us a finger gun and shot the finger gun, as if to say, for the crime of going slower than I'd like you to go, I sentence you to death. Welcome to Arizona. So, but I can only imagine that this man is operating from a lens in which he sees all around him a world of idiots, okay? Everyone is sliding him. Everyone isn't going fast enough. And so this man, I can only imagine, lives with his walls up. And how many of us know that when we put our walls up, people around us will put their walls up too? When we're afraid, when we're defensive, when we're angry, it kind of creates that same opposite reaction. And so this man's perception that people are sliding him, that people are angry with him, actually eventually becomes his reality because he responds to the world in that way. But I think the same is true if we flip it. If you look at the world through a lens of grace, if you look at the world through a lens of everyone's just trying their best, everyone's just a human being, we're all here for the first time, right? We're all first-time humans. Everyone's trying their best. And even if we look at that guy through a grace lens, that he's just afraid, he's just anxious, he's just doing behaviors and regurgitating behaviors that he was taught, and that kind of lens takes our walls down, and naturally it brings the walls down of everyone around us. And again, your perception becomes your reality. Your perception that we can have grace becomes your reality because people will extend that grace right back to you. It's a feedback loop. It's kind of like the algorithm. How many of us are aware of and maybe live a little bit in fear of the algorithm? Okay. We obviously don't want to spend too much time talking about it in our daily lives, but we all kind of know they're listening to us, okay? And they're trying to sell us stuff all the time. And so, the algorithm is that you look up something maybe one time, and all of a sudden you see advertisements for that thing constantly, right? Like, I know you looked up how to get rid of extremely bad foot odor one time, and yet you're now, for months later, you're getting messages about new shoes and things like that. But I think that the algorithm is really it's another version of what our brains do. What we see, what we perceive in the world, we will perceive more of. So if you want to have a view of reality that is cynical, that looks at the world and finds everything wrong with the world, I'm not going to tell you that that's wrong. I would say, yeah, there's plenty of things to be cynical about. But I'd also ask, what are you reading? What sites are you looking at? What social media are you subscribed to? What frequencies are you tuned into? And by that same logic, if you want to come to me and say, well, I have an optimistic view of reality and I see things through a lens of hope, again, I'd say there's nothing wrong with that. That's true also, but it's not about which of these views is correct. It's how is that view working for you? If you want to be cynical about reality, go ahead, but is that working for you? Is that making you a happier person? Is it making you a more loving person? This isn't a conversation of morals, of which view of reality is the better view. It's simply, what experience do you want to have in this life? How many of you have seen the movie Click with Adam Sandler? Oh, no, I guess I'll I guess I'll explain the whole film, start to finish. Basically, it's a comedy, but it's a movie about a man who gets access to this remote control in which he can control his life. He can pause it, he can fast forward, he can slow down, and yet, like the algorithm, the remote control is intelligent and it starts to learn his behavior, and it finds out that he wants to skip through the difficult moments of life and skip through the annoying moments of life, and so it starts to respond to that, and it starts skipping for him, and it ends up skipping decades of his life, and there's a really happy ending, but all I'll say is that, this remote, I guess more of you need to watch this movie because a lot of you didn't. This remote control is this really unique symbol for our own consciousness, because we too have this ability to slow down time and speed up time just through our perceptions, just through our ability and our intentionality to be present, to be in the moment. In fact, I believe that our consciousness and how we perceive reality is really the only thing we can control in this life. So are we going to be passive, or are we going to be active participants in the experience that we have of the world? Comedian Amy Poehler in her memoir says, "I looked around and I thought about my life. I felt grateful. I noticed every detail. That is the key to time travel. You can only move if you are actually in the moment. You have to be where you are to get where you need to go." So if presence is your goal, I think gratitude is the most potent channel that we can tune into. It's the most potent way for us to get there. And I think a big reason for that is because you and I have hunter and gatherer brains, okay? We have not evolved past hunter and gatherer evolutionarily, that dynamic in that time in history and that level of human development. So our brains, like it or not, still see things in this really black and white way between scarcity and abundance. We either have or we don't have. And this really is apparent for many of us when we think about grocery shopping, right? Like, how many of you wait way too long to go grocery shopping? You wait until your fridge is completely empty and you've been having bread sandwiches for a couple weeks. And you're like, I have to go to the store. And then you finally go to the store, and then you come home and you realize, like, did we buy the whole store? Like, is there anything left for anyone else? And yet, I think that this is indicative of our deep, innate survival mechanisms, that we see things just as our ancestors did, through this actual important instinct and this ability to be aware of and to recognize, is there scarcity in my environment? Is there a lack in my environment? And what am I going to do about it? And this naturally creates an experience that we might call anxiety. Now, flash forward to the modern world, how many of us still experience anxiety? Maybe even more than our ancestors did. I know I do. It's not something you need to feel bad about, though. It's actually something that we share with every living thing. That every living thing that has some kind of survival mechanism to keep it going has some form of experience of anxiety. I was reading the other day about an amoeba, a little amoeba, that when it gets stressed out, it kind of grows these appendages that help it swim away and get to safety. So even amoebas feel anxiety. You don't need to get too down on yourself. You're like, all right, okay. The problem with our anxiety is that we focus on the future. We focus on things that haven't happened yet. We focus on things that may never happen. Our projections about, will I have enough then? Will things be okay when this happens? How many of us have watched a nature documentary where, you have the group of gazelles hanging out, and then all of a sudden the lion just comes out of nowhere and starts chasing one of the gazelles, and you see two animals running faster than you thought anything could possibly run, and just when you think the lion is about to grab the gazelle narrowly escapes. And what does it do after it escapes? It just goes right back to its friends and kind of brushes it off and goes back to normal. The gazelle doesn't go to bed that night and dream of lions chasing it. The gazelle friends don't come up to it and go like, hey, do you want to go out tonight? And he's like, I don't think I can go out. There might be lions out there, No, it just moves on. It's able to just brush that off and move on. And yet you and I, we unfortunately don't have that level of reflexiveness to just brush it off, because we are projectors, and we are focused and oriented toward the future. And so what we tend to do in our daily lives is we go, oh man, one time I kind of think I was maybe getting chased by a lion. So then you see lions everywhere. And what happens is, instead of living with the raw truth of whatever moment we are in and the experience we are having in the present, we become very tuned into our thoughts about the future. Will I have enough? Will there be enough? Am I going to be okay? Stephen Covey says, most people are deeply scripted in what I call the scarcity mentality. They see life as having only so much, as though there were only one pie out there. And if someone wants to get a big piece of the pie, it would mean less for everybody else. I see this mentality very much at play in our world today, and really never so present than in the billionaires of society. They, for me, are an example of scarcity, because when you look at people who, well, I guess there's no billionaires here, right? I don't want to offend anyone. Hey, okay. So the thing about the billionaires is that you must ask yourself, is it ever going to be enough? Like, what number is going to be satisfying, right? Is there such a thing in this mode of being and the way that our economy works? Is there ever going to be, okay, that's enough, I did it, right? No, there's no such thing. That's how they got to where they were. And so when I look at someone with that, overinflated level of wealth, I don't see someone who's fulfilled. I actually see the opposite. I see someone with a deep lack, because there's never going to be enough. I mean, Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg were trying to organize a fight with each other in the Roman Colosseum. I'm like, chill out, okay? Everything's good. You guys don't need to brawl. But see, society doesn't just like this scarcity mindset. Society perpetuates it, because society is profiting from this feeling of scarcity. That when we experience envy, which I think in many ways is the opposite of gratitude, we buy things and we keep that system going. They want you to want what your neighbor has, to covet thy neighbor's Traeger smoker, You're thinking like, well, he can smoke brisket, I can't. And all his friends respect him. No one's going to respect me. And really, everyone's going to leave me. So I need to get the Traeger, And you're like, okay, I'm going to do it. Here's the thing. Gratitude completely flips the script. Gratitude says, I have enough. I've always had enough. This planet has made a path for me to live and thrive. My family loves me and has cared for me. I'm loved. I am supported. That is the message of gratitude. And if you don't believe me, I just want to do a little exercise just to prove it. If you can, Try to think of a time where you didn't have enough and so you died. Nobody? Good. All right. How about this? How about this? Maybe not that. Let's try this. Can you think of a time when the conditions of the universe did not align properly for you to ever be born? Can you think of a time like that? No? Okay. So then on a base level, we have been provided for. We have been supported, even by the universe. I had the opportunity to see here in Tucson an amazing singer-songwriter named John Craigie who had this song about this very idea about the universe actually making a way for you to be here. And I want to just read one verse from this song. He says, "So when the candle flickers, when the days get dark, they call them first world problems, but they still break your heart. The universe feels like it's against you. But just take a minute to realize all it took to make you. Your parents had to meet, as random as that was, and hang out long enough, at least, to make some love and make a baby and give it your name. And all your ancestors had to do the same, exponentially backwards to the start of life. So much had to happen just exactly right. Sparks had to catch, oceans had to freeze, billions of cells had to survive endless disease, civilizations had to crumble, wars had to be fought, bad presidents had to get elected, good presidents had to get shot, people had to leave, hearts had to be broken, people had to die just so your eyes could open. The universe is not against you. It went through a lot just to give you a chance. It must have wanted you pretty bad. No pressure, though. No pressure, though. The universe went through a lot, but no pressure, bro. You don't got to be perfect. You don't got to be a saint. Just don't waste it. This was not a mistake." No. I'm like, I didn't write that. So I did start to feel like almost like a rapper for a little bit, though. I did a little bit of like the river, Scarcity is looking at the future. Will there be enough? Gratitude is looking at the past as it currently forms our present and says, look how far we've come. Look how much has gone right in our lives and in our world. We can be focused on more, or we can be focused on the moment. We can always be asking, will there be more money? Will there be more success? Will there be more vacations? All of it. Or we can look at our lives now and say, look how full my life is in this moment. Look at all that I overcame to get here. Look at how the most difficult moments actually taught me the very thing that I would need to know to move forward. Look at how much love there is in my life. Acknowledging the good that you already have in your life is the foundation for all abundance. This is Eckhart Tolle. Said another way by prophet and philosopher Sheryl Crow in her 2002 smash single, "Soak Up the Sun," she says, "It's not having what you want, it's wanting what you've got." Yeah. That one hit deeper than the Eckhart Tolle. You thought I just followed it right up, When we reframe the past into an abundance narrative, we actually tune into a better present where we can recognize this moment as it is right now, it's enough. Instead of focusing on all that's gone wrong, we can look at all that's gone right. Now, I want to acknowledge there is a little bit of a trap that we might fall into. And that trap is that you might walk out of these doors and say, well, that was pretty cool, but I really want to understand this abundance thing. I'm really not abundant enough. I need more abundance. Where's my abundance? Like I lack abundance, And yet the problem with that is we're right back into that scarcity mentality. And so maybe instead we can look at our lives as they are right now with unconditional love, with unconditional acceptance for who we are and how we're showing up, full stop. And that includes everything that's happened to you, every failure, every mistake, not pretending that it was all easy at the time, but embracing the fullness of who you are. I want to close with this, and it's a verse from the New Testament. It's a letter that Paul is writing to the Ephesians. And now, if this type of language is not something that you're familiar with, or not something that you feel resonates with you at this time in your journey, I fully encourage you to translate this in whatever way feels that you helps you best connect to it. But really, what I want to do is just pull out a particular concept in this verse, so you can kind of look at it that way. In Ephesians 1:9, he set it all out before us in Christ, a long-range plan in which everything would be brought together and summed up in him, everything in deepest heaven, everything on planet Earth. I want us to really focus on that phrase, brought together and summed up. In some other translations, that phrase is brought together in unity, or everything has had unity brought to it, or gathered all things together in unity. That phrase is actually one Greek word, and that word is ana kephaleosistai. Ana kephaleosistai. How many letters do you think that is? 19 letters, okay? Ana means again. Kephale means head. And so this word directly translated mean to bring again together under one head. It's actually a mathematical term, as if to say that in the equation of life, everything adds up and balances out. That all the difficulty, all the pain, all the loss, all the heartache, it wasn't subtracting from your journey. It was all adding, and everything equals out. Everything is brought together. The things that you thought were the most difficult things, looking at them in hindsight, you realize it all played a part. Everything belongs. So those moments, that moment where you lost your job and you thought, how are we going to get out of this? But now you can look back and anakephaleosistai it. I'm turning it into a verb. Grammar police, come get me, whatever. And when you look at that moment, you can now see, well, if it weren't for that failure, or what felt like a loss in that moment, it wouldn't have led me to that other thing, that other place I needed to be. That time when that person failed you, or your faith fell apart, an entire institution failed you. But if you anakephaleosistai it, you can see that there's a greater purpose. There's something bigger happening. And you can actually be grateful for those moments. Even that time when you made a mistake and you thought there's no coming back from this. But when you anakephaleosistai it, everything, even our worst failures, everything belongs. Everything finds its place. So tuning into the frequency of gratitude, it's not pretending that all those moments were easy, or that at the time you felt like you knew what was going on at all. No, the frequency of gratitude is the reminder that all things can be brought together in a new perspective, to be reframed. And gratitude is the glue. So Aldea, may we become the DJs of our emotional experience, playing songs of abundance rather than songs of scarcity. May we look at the past and see all that went right to get us here. May we take the pain, the heartache, the loss, and anakephaleosistai it, so that we can say to our lives and to the world around us, everything belongs.